If someone had told me that the two people I trusted most in my life would destroy everything in a single night, I would have laughed in their face. But that's exactly what happened. And the worst part? I didn't find out because they told me the truth. I found out because of a pregnancy test hidden in my own bathroom trash can. And the timeline made absolutely no sense. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's Daniel. I'm 32 years old, and at the time all of this happened, I had been married for 3 years to my wife, Sarah. We'd been together for almost 7. From the outside, our life looked pretty normal. Decent house in the suburbs. 2 stable jobs. Weekend barbecues with friends. The kind of quiet, predictable life most people eventually settle into. And honestly, I liked it that way. Sarah was the emotional one in the relationship. I was the logical one. Whenever we had problems, I'd usually be the one trying to calm things down and figure out solutions. That dynamic worked for years. At least, I thought it did. The first weird thing happened on a Thursday night. I remember the exact day because I had stayed late at work finishing a project. I got home around 9:30 p.m., expecting Sarah to already be there watching Netflix like usual. But the house was dark. No lights. No TV. No car in the driveway. That wasn't completely unusual. Sometimes she'd grab dinner with friends or go shopping after work. But what was unusual was the fact that she hadn't texted me. Sarah texted constantly. So I pulled out my phone and sent a message. "Hey, where are you?" No response. 10 minutes later I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. At first I assumed her phone battery had died. But then another small detail started bothering me. Her location. We shared location on our phones for convenience, mostly because of traffic and commuting. And according to the map, she was about 15 minutes away. At my brother Jason's apartment. Now normally that wouldn't be a big deal. Jason and I were close. He lived nearby, and Sarah had always gotten along with him. Sometimes she'd stop by if she was in the area. But something about the timing felt off. Still, I didn't jump to conclusions. Around 10:15 p.m. I heard a car pull into the driveway. Sarah walked in carrying a takeout bag. "Hey," she said casually, like nothing was strange. "Where were you?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. Just grabbed food after work. That answer should have been simple. Except for one small problem. I had already seen her location. So I asked a very specific question. "From Jason's place?" And for the first time since I'd known her, Sarah froze. It only lasted about a second. But when someone pauses before answering a basic question, your brain notices. "Oh," she said quickly. "Yeah, I stopped there for a bit. He needed help moving some stuff." That explanation technically made sense. Jason had moved apartments recently. But again, something about it felt slightly off. Still, I let it go. At least for the moment. Over the next few weeks, things started getting strange. Sarah was suddenly very protective of her phone. She started taking calls in another room. Sometimes I'd walk into the kitchen and she'd flip the screen face down like she didn't want me seeing something. And the weirdest part, Jason started acting different too. My brother had always been relaxed around me. We joked constantly. But now every time the three of us were in the same room together, there was this weird tension. Like both of them were waiting for something. Watching me carefully. At first I told myself I was imagining it. Then came the pregnancy test. It was a Sunday morning. I had woken up early and was taking out the bathroom trash before doing laundry. When I lifted the lid of the trash can, I noticed a small white plastic stick wrapped in toilet paper. Curiosity made me unwrap it. 2 pink lines. Positive. My first reaction wasn't panic. It was confusion. Because Sarah and I had been actively trying to get pregnant for almost a year. If this test was hers, she should have been excited. She should have told me immediately. Instead, it was hidden. That's when the logical part of my brain started building a timeline. And the more I thought about it, the worse the math became. Because the last time Sarah and I had actually slept together was almost 6 weeks ago. which meant one very uncomfortable possibility was starting to form in my head. But I still didn't want to believe it. Not yet. So instead of confronting her immediately, I decided to start paying closer attention. And within 3 days, I saw something that confirmed my worst suspicion. Sarah wasn't just lying to me. She was lying with someone I had trusted my entire life. And when I finally confronted them both, the truth that came out was even worse than I imagined. The moment everything finally snapped into focus happened 3 days after I found the pregnancy test. It was a Tuesday evening. I had left work early, mostly because I couldn't focus on anything. My brain kept replaying the same question over and over again. If Sarah was pregnant, why hide it? And more importantly, why had she been spending so much time with my brother? When I pulled into our driveway around 5:30 p.m., Sarah's car wasn't there. That alone wasn't strange. What was strange was the notification that popped up on my phone. Her location had just updated. And once again, she was at Jason's apartment. I sat there in the car for about 30 seconds staring at the map. Then I started the engine again and drove. Jason lived about 15 minutes away, in a small apartment complex near downtown. The whole drive there felt weirdly calm. No yelling in my head. No panic. Just this quiet, almost clinical feeling. Like I was about to confirm a theory. When I reached the parking lot, I immediately saw Sarah's car, parked right outside Jason's building. I walked up the stairs and knocked on the door. There were footsteps inside. Then silence. Then whispering. That was the moment I already knew. The door opened a few seconds later. Jason stood there looking like someone who had just seen a ghost. "Hey man," he said. He never called me that. It was always Dan. Always. I looked past him into the apartment. Sarah was standing in the living room. Her face went pale the moment she saw me. "Daniel," she said softly. That was the first time my name had ever sounded like an apology. For a few seconds nobody spoke. Then I asked the simplest possible question. "Sarah, are you pregnant?" Her eyes widened. Jason looked down at the floor. And that silence answered more than any words could have. "Okay," I said slowly. "Let's try this again." I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. "When were you planning to tell me?" Neither of them answered. So I continued. "I found the test on Sunday. The one you hid in the bathroom trash." Sarah's hands started shaking. "Daniel, I can explain." "No," I interrupted calmly. "What you can do is answer one question." I turned toward my brother. "Jason, is the baby yours?" The room went completely silent. Jason rubbed his hands together nervously like he was trying to warm them up. Then he said the one word that destroyed everything. "Yeah." Just like that. No dramatic speech. No complicated explanation. Just yeah. For a moment I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the human brain sometimes needs a second to process how unbelievably stupid people can be. "My wife," I said slowly, "is pregnant with my brother's kid." Neither of them argued with that summary. Sarah started crying. "Daniel, there is one last part of the story that most people don't hear. Because technically, everything should have ended with the divorce. Sarah moved in with Jason. They had the baby. I moved on. Simple. Except real life rarely stays that clean. About 2 years after everything happened, I ran into someone I hadn't seen since the entire mess started. My brother. It happened at a gas station about 20 minutes from my house. I was grabbing coffee before work when I noticed someone standing a few feet away staring at me like they weren't sure if they should walk over. It took me a second to recognize him. Jason looked older. Not physically, exactly. Just tired. Like life had been grinding him down for a while. He walked over slowly. "Hey, Dan." That name sounded strange coming from him after all that time. I nodded once. "Jason." For a few seconds neither of us spoke. Then he said something I honestly wasn't expecting. "I'm sorry." No excuses. No blaming Sarah. Just those 2 words. I looked at him for a moment. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel angry anymore. Not even a little. Anger burns out eventually. What replaces it is usually something quieter. Distance. I know, I said. He seemed surprised by that. Then he asked the question I think had been bothering him for 2 years. Do you hate me? I thought about it for a second. Then I shook my head. No. Which was technically true. Hate requires energy. And by that point, I had already spent enough energy on that chapter of my life. Jason nodded slowly, like he understood exactly what that meant. We stood there awkwardly for a few seconds longer before he said, "Take care of yourself." You too. Then we walked in opposite directions. And that was the last time I saw my brother. Life is strange like that. Sometimes the people who betray you the worst don't get dramatic movie-style punishment. Sometimes they just slowly realize what they destroyed. Friendships, family, trust, and they have to live with that knowledge every single day. Meanwhile, you move on, build a better life, meet better people, and eventually, the whole situation turns into nothing more than a story you tell on the internet. So yeah, that's my story. But now I want to hear yours. If someone betrayed you like this, your partner and your own family, would you ever forgive them? Or is that the kind of line you can never come back from? Tell me what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about betrayal, karma, and the strange ways life works itself out, make sure you like the video and subscribe. Because, trust me, the next story I'm sharing might actually be even crazier than this one. Before I end this story, there's one last thought I want to leave you with. For a long time after everything happened, I kept asking myself the same question. How did I not see it? Looking back now, the truth is, the signs were there. The late nights. The strange tension whenever the three of us were in the same room. The sudden secrecy with phones. But when you trust someone, really trust them, your brain doesn't immediately jump to betrayal. It looks for normal explanations. You assume the best. And sometimes that's exactly why people get away with things for as long as they do. But here's the strange part. If I could go back and change what happened, I'm honestly not sure I would. Because the version of my life I have now only exists because everything fell apart back then. And sometimes the worst chapter in your life ends up being the one that forces you to start a better one. So maybe the real lesson here isn't about revenge. It's about clarity. When people show you who they really are, believe them. Anyway, that's the full story. If you made it this far, I'm genuinely curious about something. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have reacted calmly the way I did? Or would you have completely lost it the moment you found out? Be honest. Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy real dramatic stories like this one, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Because, trust me, there are a lot more unbelievable stories out there. There's actually one more moment in this story that stayed with me longer than I expected. It happened about 3 years after everything fell apart. By that point, my life looked completely different. Different apartment. Different job. Different group of friends. Even my routine had changed. I started working out regularly, picked up running, and focused on things that had nothing to do with the past. For the most part, the entire situation with Sarah and Jason had turned into something that felt distant, like a story that happened to someone else. Then one afternoon I got a message on social media. Not from Sarah. From someone I didn't recognize. The message said, "Hi, you don't know me, but I think you should know something about Jason." At first I assumed it was spam. But curiosity got the better of me. So I opened it. The person explained that they worked with Jason at a construction company. Apparently, Jason had been talking about his life during lunch breaks. About the divorce. About the baby. About the fight with his brother. And at some point he said something that stuck with his coworker enough to send me a message. According to them, Jason had said, "I had everything. A brother who trusted me. A family that respected me. And I ruined it for something that didn't even last." When I read that, I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel revenge. Mostly I just felt strange. Because for a long time after the betrayal, part of me wondered if Jason ever really understood what he had done. Apparently he did. And the truth is, that realization probably hurts a lot more than anything I could have done to him. Regret is a heavy thing to carry, especially when you know you created the problem yourself. I never replied to that message. There wasn't really anything to say. But later that night I sat for a while thinking about how differently things could have turned out. If Sarah had just been honest. If Jason had respected basic boundaries. If one small decision had gone a different way. But life doesn't work like that. People make choices. Sometimes terrible ones. And those choices shape everything that comes afterward. In a strange way, the whole situation taught me something important. Not everyone who betrays you ends up winning. Sometimes they end up building their entire future on a moment they wish they could take back. And that kind of regret can last a lifetime. Anyway, now I really want to hear what you think. If someone in your own family crossed a line like this, would you ever reconnect with them years later? Or are some betrayals simply too big to repair? Let me know in the comments. I read a lot of them. And sometimes the stories you guys share are even crazier than mine.